Hey guys, today I received the new Rokinon 85 1.4 for the Sony E-mount. The lens just came out, and I know that a lot of people have been waiting for the test and see how this compares to other Sony lenses like the 85 1.4 GM, the 1.8, or the Baptist, for example. So although I have limited time because I'm going on a trip, I decided to do a quick test and do some tests for resolution, bokeh, autofocus, and video autofocus, and low light autofocus. So hopefully this will be enough for now for you guys to get an idea whether you want to test this lens or not. So at $700, I'm going to be comparing the Rokinon versus the mighty 85 1.4 GM. Now, size-wise, the GM is bigger, but it's not huge. But size weight is definitely a lot more on the GM, and I'm going to put them on a scale later to show you. And you can see the elements. The GM is definitely bigger front element. But other than that, they feel very good. So the Samyang or Rokinon, I keep calling it Samyang because I'm used to buying Samyang versions, but it's the same as Rokinon. So go ahead and check those tests. I put a description. On the description, you have a link to download the file so you can check the photos on your end. Let me know what you think. If you're going to give this a try, or you prefer to stay with one of the other lenses like the 85 or the Baptist or the Sigma. So let's check those files out. Okay, so here we got some of the sample images that I took today. Again, with the limitations of the day that I have for this and the weather, I did my best. So hopefully what I did here is enough to give you an idea of how the lenses compare. So first of all, we have the Sony A7, the Sony A7R III are for all the lens uses that I did today. This is the GM, and this will be the Rokinon, which I put like a label in all the Rokinon photos. If I sometimes call it Samyang, like I said, it's because I'm more used to calling them Samyang than Rokinon. But anyways, let's go 100% and 100%, and let's see how they compare. So we have the Sony. This is on all my tests. I take about 10 different photos for the same area. So this is 10 photos that I take for the center, 10 photos for the left and right. So what I show here is the best of all the 10. And if I see any issues of consistency between the different shots that I took, if I take 10 and only 3 are sharp or something like that, I will let you know. But they were pretty consistent. And this is the best that I could find from the 85 GM Sony, and this is the best from the Samyang. So to me, the Rokinon looks sharper definitely in the center than the Sony. And not only that, in all the photos I always see that the Samyang seems to be a little bit closer, so it seems to be either the Sony is a little bit less than 85 or this one is a little bit more than 85. But in any case, let's just scroll a little bit and see how it looks on the left side. So on the left side, actually, the Sony looks sharper than the Samyang. Now, the camera was mounted on a very solid tripod. This is a Manfrotto 475B. It's a huge tripod and a very solid head, so there's no movement whatsoever while I was changing the lenses. So what you see here is an equal term comparison. So scrolling to the right side, here we have the Samyang on this side. Now the Rokinon is a lot sharper here, so hard to tell what's going on. But this corner seems to be where the Rokinon that I have has the most issues, and you'll see that here on the edges the Sony is actually sharper on this side, even though on the lower part the Samyang was sharper. So it's on this side is what I'm seeing several issues with this Rokinon lens, which I'm assuming has some decentering or something along those lines. Because up to here, it seems that this is a Sony here, and this is the Rokinon. So the Rokinon seems to be sharper up to this spot, but the moment it gets all the way here, it just loses to the Sony. Now, of course, there's this issue with the vignette, in which you can see this is a Sony, and the Rokinon is a lot darker in every corner. So back to 100%. Let's scroll down to the lower left part. This is the Sony, and this is the Rokinon, Sony, Rokinon, And in this case, even at this spot here, it's still way sharper than the Sony. So I think my Sony is a bit decenter on towards the right side. That's why it's beaten by the Rokinon on the right side. But here we got the Rokinon again. The center of the image is sharper than the Sony. I mean, it's pretty clear that it's sharper. Rokinon, Sony. How about the right corner here? Rokinon, Sony. So in some areas it's way sharper than my Sony, which is pretty outstanding when you consider that it's a $700 lens versus $1,800. So if we could find a perfect copy of this lens, will be fantastic, I would say. But anyways, let's move on to the next set of images. Remember, all these images will be on the description. There's going to be a link to a Google Drive link, so you can download them and check them out all you want. So let's grab from the shard. I did another shard test, and this one is a bit different because I focused specifically on this area here with the lens, instead of like seeing if it's a flat, how it performed flat, wide open across the image. And this particular test, I decided just to focus on a specific point. So here we have the Rokinon, which I didn't label on this one, sorry, but it's on the name of the file, so it will say Rokinon chart left. And this is the Sony. So Rokinon, Sony, Rokinon, and I'm gonna call it Samyang for now because it's what I normally call them. It's annoying me. So yeah, since the Samyang is actually sharper and that, but it's fairly sharper and it's sort of sharper, I guess. It's pretty even, I will say. So let's go to the right side. And on this right side, I had a lot of problems finding really a sharp image from the Samyang. So once again, that seems to be the problematic area of my copy of the lens. So this is the Rokinon. This is the Sony. Now all the Sony ones were very similar. They all look kind of like this, but the Rokinon, even though you can see it's clearly not as sharp as the Sony, and that was by far the best of all 5 that I took on that side. So let's move to the next set. So on this one, I was trying to focus on the box here and then show some of the bokeh, even though it's a bit, I'll have a different test for bokeh later. That will be a bit more useful, I think. But anyways, here's the one with the VIX box. So Rokinon, you can see that color cast. And this is Sony GM. Rokinon, Sony GM. So it seems to me like the Rokinon is able to give a bit more of the texture here and the VIX logo, maybe. While the Sony seems to not quite give me the same detail. You can see also here like the warm steam, all that area, even though the focusing point was here, but it's a flat surface, so it doesn't matter. But on this, my plane of focus was a bit off. But overall, I think the Samyang is doing better here than the Sony. But again, download the files and you can tell by yourself if you feel the same way. And if not, let me know in the comments what you think. So here we go, another test. This one is focusing on the left side, just about where you will put your subject if you're following some of the rule of thirds kind of composition. So here we have the Sony. And here we have the Rokinon or Samyang, Sony, Samyang. And I'm going to go kind of fast through this because you're going to be able to download the files, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to put this video up and give you some idea of what to expect from the lens. Same test, right side this time, Samyang, and the Sony GM. So on this one, I can see the VIX and the texture here. it's kind of close. In some areas, it looks like the Sony looks better. In some others, the Samyang seems to look a bit better. So neither is really defeating the other by much. So this is a tree in front of my house. When the weather started finally clearing out a little bit, I'm gonna go the global shot. This is how it looks on the Rokinon or Samyang, and this is on the Sony. So honestly, it's very hard to tell, but you can see here that the Sony is a bit smoother on this left side, the fence there on the background. Let's see, this is a Sony, and this is a Samyang. And if I go to 100%, let's see if there's the details here. Very, very, very close to my eyes. Let's see how the foliage looks. This is Rokinon, and this is the Sony. Rokinon and Sony. Again, very, very close. It's trees on the background. That's the Sony here. And switching to the Samyang, Sony, Samyang. Very hard to tell on this picture, at least for me. So let's go to the next one. Okay, on this next one, I decided to do some eye focus test. To minimize human error, what I did was I placed the camera on the tripod again, and I put myself against the wall, and obviously the steady shot was off on the camera, so basically there was no movement possible because I was against the wall. So any error was either on the camera or the lens causing issues with the autofocus. That was the best that I could come up with in order to minimize this. And since my wife didn't want to be in the video or the photo, so she asked me for me to pose, and then she would just push the button. So here's what I got. So let's go full screen, and you can see clearly which one is the Samyang here because of the color cast is much different than the Sony, but I put my label myself in the forehead. Anyways, here we go. This is the Sony, and this is the Samyang. I think it's pretty clear to me that the Samyang seems to have like more contrast and more detail in more areas. The Sony seems to drop to the sharpness drops faster. So yeah, interesting. I don't know. I would love to see your comments about what you think about this test and how they compare. Now, this test was done before the firmware 3.0, so I'll have to do extra tests and see if there's any changes. But here's a farther away full size shot, Sony and Samyang, as you can see on my forehead. Okay. And there's a couple of more. There's one on the left side that I did here. So this would be focusing on the, well, if I select the right file, it might be better. Okay, let's try this again. So we got the Sony and the Rokinon. Apparently I put the same on both. Okay, this works better. So this was on the right side of the screen. So this is the Sony and Rokinon. So Samyang seems to be once again, and I'm probably driving you guys crazy by going between Samyang and Rokinon all the time. So my apologies for that. Samyang, Sony. So in a way, the Sony doesn't make me work as hard cleaning because it has like a softer look, where the Samyang shows more detail, so more cleaning to do. But the detail is there. I think the Samyang is winning this detail battle, at least to my eyes right here. So again, download the files from the description and test them on your end and let me know what you think. This is another test here. This is a car that was parked far away from my home, so I decided to take a shot since it was white and black areas. So here we have the Sony, and here we have the Samyang. So in this shot, it seems to me like the Sony is actually a tiny bit sharper where it says Nissan. At least to me, it seems a little bit sharper, but when you move to the sides here, that's when you can actually see that the Sony is actually sharper in this area. See how the address is quite different here. And here is an area where you can see the problem that I was telling you about on the right side of my Samyang. Look at this, like numbers is like very weird rendering and how it's doing with that number there on the mailbox. The Sony seems more normal blur than that, and I think you can see it even here on the sidewalk. The Rokinon, well, actually on the sidewalk, the Rokinon is actually sharper than the Sony, so never mind that. And by a lot. How about these trees here? So I don't know. It seems to be happening again where the left side is better on the Sony and the right side, aside from the very top edge, it's better on the Rokinon. Samyang, or whatever you want to call it by now. Okay, one more small tree here. I wanted to show some of the bokeh. So this is how the Sony will blur, focusing on this here on the tree and the bush, I mean. And this is the Rokinon or Samyang. So Samyang, Sony. I mean, considering how awesome the Sony is with bokeh, in some areas the Samyang is actually doing pretty darn good. One thing I noticed is like on all my shots for this bush with the Sony, you had more trouble like getting the focus for some reason. All the Samyang looked like this, but on the Sony ones, this was the only one that looked like sharp in what I wanted it to be sharp. Plus, it seems to have less areas of where that are sharp. Look at the Samyang. See how more of the areas are in focus where the Sony is not. So either the Sony has a different way of rendering where it drops sharpness very fast away from the center, or I don't know how to explain this, or the Samyang is not really 1.4 aperture, but then like kind of the amount of blur tells me that it is. I have no idea. If somebody has an idea, please comment, because it's confusing to me why if both are the same aperture, one seems to have a deeper depth of field than the other. But when you examine the photos downloaded from the descriptions, you might be able to give me an idea what's going on. Here is one test that I always like to do because there's what I call the warm rendering on some bushes in this area. Now the focus point was right here where I put that fancy arrow. So you can see that's the Samyang and this is the Sony. So since the Samyang was actually a bit sharper here, you can see also on that tiny antenna thingy. Yeah, well, the wolf is kind of blocking me, so never mind that white part. But this is what I wanted to see. Right here, this is always kind of like a interesting test because this ends up looking like worms. But this Sony is able to blur it a lot more, and it almost gets a little bit of a STF kind of look, where the Samyang gives me a more normal, defined structure here that I don't like when it's something like this. So when it comes to fighting bad backgrounds, which maybe you shouldn't be shooting on backgrounds, but anyways, the GM is still the king, and you can see here it clearly gives a much smoother rendition of that background than the Samyang. Now at a normal distance, can you tell? A little bit, but still interesting how the Sony is able to create that almost STF kind of look in some areas where the Samyang seems to be able to fight, battle evenly with the Sony in some other areas, but not in that particular shot, that's for sure. And that's about it. There's one more shot that I did. I wish I could have done a model shoot for this, but with the weather today, late winter storm, it wasn't possible. So this last one was like focusing on this tree here, Sony and the Samyang. Just a quick look around. Let's see, this is the Rokinon or Samyang, and this is the Sony. So in this case, the Sony shows just weird worms on the left side. Like even if I had to say, the Samyang seems to be showing less weirdness on the rendition. They look at only here like magenta or green. So go Samyang, did very good there. Let's see on the right side. This is the Samyang and this is the Sony. So not a big difference here. Oh, look at this, the bubbles there. Interesting. The Sony seems to have this purple dot inside, where the Samyang seems pretty clear of it. Now I've seen some other areas where the Sony will look better, like it will have less defined structure of like the bubbles, for example, on the bokeh, which I suspected. But overall, looking at the image from the Sony to the Samyang and back to Sony, it's not a huge difference, at least in my opinion. So I'm not sure what you guys think. Anyways, let's move on to other tests, and you can download the files and check them out later. So now I'm gonna be testing the autofocus speed, and this is the 85 GM. So we're gonna go from close focus, far focus, and I'm gonna change the auto ISO so it's easier to see the nearby objects. Hopefully you will pick it up. So the GM is actually, in my opinion, pretty fast. Let's try focusing even farther down. So to the back, oops, on the box, back, box, fence, box. So this is the Sony 85 GM autofocus speed. Let's go ahead and test the Samyang. Okay, so now we're testing the Samyang, or Rokinon in this case, 85 1.4. Just came out. Just like we did with the GM, is center focus. So first on the box and on the tree. Tree, box, tree, box, tree, box. I can't tell any difference right now, maybe when I see the video. Oh, there's a slight hiccup there. Let's try like I did with the GM. Fence and back. So honestly, first impression, I can't see any difference in the speed. Oops. That same issue happened with the GM, where we focus on, it didn't know where to focus for a moment. So far, speed-wise for autofocus, it seems to be just as good as the GM, but I will be more able to determine it after I see the video. Because for this final test, I'm gonna be using the Sony 85 GM. This is a low light autofocus test. And the room is very, very dim. There's only one light in the room, which is like backed against the wall. So it's kind of just bouncing on the wall behind me. The only reason you can see kind of light on the room right now is because I'm using the Sigma 16mm 1.4 at ISO 2000, shutter speed 50 to record this. But on the camera, 200 shutter speed, ISO 320 and 1.4, well, basically you don't see anything. So I'm gonna see if I can track here this nearby object, bar, far, near. I'm sorry, sometimes I don't even know where it's like I'm not see the object very well. So kind of guessing where it is. See? So sometimes when it misses, it's because I'm hitting something that has like just pure black basically. But even then, I think it's doing an awesome job at 1.4. And this is the GM, which is not supposed to be very good. In photo focus in a low light, of course, this is a 1.4. So if you stop it down to, I don't know, 5, let's go to like 8, f8, and then it's gonna be super dark now. Still able to find it. So this is at f8. Not bad, I think. So next, the Samyang or Rokinon. Okay, so finally now we have the Rokinon 85 1.4 for the test. So we're gonna start at 1.4 and 200 shutter speed like I did with the Sony GM. So nearby object, or nearby. Oh, some hunting there. I didn't see that on the Sony, but yeah, it seems to be having some issues finding this object. It takes a bit longer than the Sony, seems to go more directly to it in most of the tests that I did. That was interesting. That seems to be picking it up fine, but yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I see that pulse kind of like thinks about it, goes and then fine tunes it. So I don't think I noticed that on the Sony, but I'll have to go back to the video and check it out. Okay, now let's try it at f8 and 100 like I did with Sony, just to keep the settings consistent. 100, f8. Okay, so I can't even see it. Okay. I don't know if you can hear that noise. I'm gonna put my microphone. It's a noise that you notice with the Sony. It's like a tuck, 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 tuck kind of noise. But overall, I think when I point towards where the right object is, it's doing a good job. So anyways, this is the end of the review. This is kind of abrupt, but as I said, I have very limited time to do this test today, and the weather didn't cooperate. And since I'm going to be flying to a different country in a few days, I wanted to do this now. Otherwise, it would have taken me like 2 weeks to get this uploaded. So again, hopefully this is helpful for you. And I would like to know your opinion about the lens based on the test that I just did. Are you interested in getting this? Are you just gonna go with a Sony 85 1.8, the GM, the Sigma, the Batis? I'm just curious, what do you think now that this new $700 1.4 option is available for Sony E-mount? So let me know. Write the comment, subscribe, like, and share the video so I can create more videos for you. Thank you for watching.